My name's Doug Ray. I'm glad to be here. I want to thank you for welcoming me to your family. This is my confession of faith, if you will. I've been a long road to get here, and I don't think I would have changed anything about it whatsoever. But bear with me here, because you're going to get to hear some of the good, the bad, and the ugly today. This is a story of kind of like what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. I was born in Beatrice, raised with a good family, not a whole lot of church background either, but nevertheless a very good family. Just didn't attend church much, and went to school here, Boy Scout, Troop 221, Eagle Scout, class of 1977, graduated 1980 from Beatrice High School. And there, after that, somewhere my life took a little bit of a turn. I started hanging out with people that I would never have taken home to meet my parents, I'll tell you that. I started just taking an easier, softer way if I could. And by the age of 22, I was a raging alcoholic. My life was out of control. I had done a dead end to nowhere, and I didn't know what was going on. I was introduced to a group that helps people recover from the disease of alcoholism. And although it's not a religious group, it's very spiritual. And at the age of 22, I think, is when my spiritual journey really began. I didn't know who God was or what God was. I didn't really know if I wanted to commit myself to anything like that whatsoever at that point in my life. I was too busy having fun to worry about consequences and to worry about what might happen or where I was going to go. But the group that I joined, they stressed, they're not religious, but they stress God, and they stressed how to find God. I was so full of questions. I'm the kind of guy that wants to get everything right. You know, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life praying to the wrong God. What would that be like? You know, so I was just stuck. I'm just not going to do it at all. But a man who became my spiritual advisor, if you will, guided me through the process. And I owe my life to him today. I had all kinds of stupid questions, and he had real dumb answers for me, too, that I didn't see the value in at the time whatsoever. And I would say, but what is God? He said, well, what do you think God is? You know, that's your choice. Because this group, they stress a God of your understanding, a God as you understand God. They use the word higher power. They use lots of other things because they don't want to exclude anybody. But that exclusion kind of worked against me a little bit, because with my magnificent magnifying mind, I had to get it right. And so I went on a quest to figure out what God is and who God was. And every time that I tried to put a limit or I did a description on God, I found that I was putting him in a box and putting him on a shelf somewhere, or trying to bring him down to my level. I spent quite a few years trying to get that exact definition so that I knew what God was. And I tell you, that's a lonely, desperate place to be sometimes as well. Because in the end, really what I found out was that God was. It didn't matter what God was, as long as God was God and he was in my life, and I was turning my will and my life over to the care of him. You know, my friend Rick, who is my spiritual advisor, if you will, he taught me how to pray. I didn't know. He told me lots of nice little hints, tips, and stuff that helped me along the way. And I said, well, it feels phony when I'm praying. Doesn't feel like it's right. He'd say stuff like, fake it till you make it. You know, just try it. What's it going to hurt? Are you out anything? You know? So I did. But I didn't know how to do that. He'd say, did you get down on your knees and pray this morning? I forgot. He'd say, well, how are you going to remember? I said, I don't know. It's just, I'm so busy all the time, I never remember. So he told me another little tidbit. When I go to bed at night, he says, when you take your shoes off, kick them under the bed so far you can't get to them without getting down there. And in the morning, when you're already there, spend 10 seconds and say something. Just say thank you and please. And so it started out that way for me. The Bible says that a faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. And that's about where I started with my faith. Just hoping that my life could get a little better somehow. That's just that little hope that maybe I wouldn't have to suffer and be in the place I was before that point. And I said, but what do I pray for? How do I do that? He says, the simpler the better. And he taught me the prayer that I use today a lot still. He said, anything over 30 seconds is probably going to start to become BS anyway, so keep it short and simple. And he taught me a 12-word prayer that I still use, and that is, Dear God, I can't, you can, and I think I'll let you today. When I get in a tough spot, I can remember that prayer. I can remember that I'm not in charge, God is. That was a huge help for me. It didn't necessarily stop my quest to understand God and to become the all-knowing being in charge of what God was. But it did kind of settle me down a little bit and put me in the right direction where I could actually start growing spiritually. I went through a lot of changes in that time. In 2007, October 2007, my son was diagnosed with a rare form of childhood cancer called rhabdomyosarcoma. The prognosis was not good. And again, my faith was tested. I think I went through about everything that any adult, any parent would when their child gets sick. I argued with God. I begged with God. I pleaded with God to take me instead of him. I tried to bring him down to my level, something that I could negotiate with. And I fought real hard. My faith was tested very, very hard. But by that time, my friend Rick, we'd split up, gone separate ways, and there was another fellow came into my life who I'd known him for about as of last week, about 30-some years I'd known him. But he in his third career, after he retired twice, became a priest in the Episcopalian Church, after I'd already known him for 20 years or better. And he helped me through Ian's stuff. It helped me understand that God wasn't punishing me. God wasn't punishing Ian. God didn't cause that cancer, but God was there to give me comfort and give aid and support to my son. And I had some choices to make at that point. I could blame God, I could become bitter and walk away from my faith, or I could accept God in my life and try to be a help and a guidance to my son and help him get through his phase of life. It wasn't fun. It wasn't what I had planned. And it wasn't anything that I think any parent ever wants to have to go through. But I did learn from that, and I think the understanding came to me through his illness and his impending death, that I think God said to me early on, this child's going to have some trouble, and he's going to need someone who can be there to help him. So I'm going to give him to you for 20 years, and when it's time to come back, when it's time for me, then I want him back. That turned my anger and fear and all the garbage going on inside me into feelings of hope and gratitude that young man was part of my life for 20 years. He was a giving person, great guy. I wish everybody could have known him. I really do, because the last couple of days we were putting him into hospice. His biggest fear was, he says, Dad, I can't leave you because you're going to be alone. And I told him, no, I'm never going to be alone. I've got so much more now than I ever had. It's indescribable what I've learned and where I'm at today. He's with me every single day of my life. And Jesus is with me today. I couldn't have made it through that either, I don't think, without my faith that I've developed through all the other stuff that was going on in my life and my spiritual development, if you will. But that made me a different person, a lot different person than I could have been. I could have been bitter, I could have been disenfranchised and disheartened, and I could have just gone off, and I could very easily have been alone. I could have just shut the door, turned out the lights, and never come out of my house again. That was that easy. But on his last day, he asked if we could do something, just do anything, to help alleviate some pain and suffering from somebody else who's going through the junk he went through. He said, "Please, Dad, don't let all the suffering I've been through be for nothing." So now that was the birth of the Ian Ray Memorial Foundation, which now we're having our 8th annual golf tournament to raise funds for families of sick children. We carry his message, and we give hope to other families and other people. Again, that's not me. That's not what I do of and by myself. That was inspired by God, truly. The questions that that I'm supposed to be answering for you people today is, why Jesus? Why the church? Well, the truth of the matter is, if I didn't have Jesus and God in my life today, the other side of that coin is that all this is nothing, that we're on a rock spinning through nothingness, headed from nowhere, going nowhere, with no purpose in life and nothing to look forward to and nothing at all, just total nothingness. And I refuse to live in a world like that. I choose to believe, and I do believe, that Jesus is my Savior. He's here for me. He's been with me every time. Through all those dark spots, through all those times, He's always been there. I didn't always see it. But when I look back, I know that I couldn't have made it alone. And why the church? Well, we've talked about it in sermons before. The church is where you are when you're worshiping Jesus. And I used to think, I don't have to be in a building to do that. I could do that at home. And I could. I very well could. I could be home right now giving thanks to Jesus. But this is where I come to celebrate and to learn how you do it, how to get through that stuff. I didn't wake up one day and just have an instruction book in front of me telling me what I had to do next to get through all this junk I've been through. You people lead by example, and you show me. Jesus works through you, and He puts people in my life. When things are going bad, I can say, what would Dick do? What would Joe do in that situation? Because I'm here, I see you, and I know who you are and what you are. I can apply those principles of the things I admire in you into my life as well, and try to become a better person because of it. We fast forward here to this year, and a lot of you know I've had some health issues myself. I was in the hospital the better part of 22 days in August, 3 different times in the hospital, helicopter rides, all kinds of stuff, lots of stuff going on in my life here lately. But on August 22nd of this year, I was at work. When I went into AFib, my blood pressure plummeted, and they put me on a helicopter to come back to Lincoln. And that helicopter ride, I remember they were loading me on the gurney into the helicopter, and I said it's one of the simplest prayers I've ever said, and I asked that God look after the flight crew and get them home to their family that night, and I just said, "Thy will, not mine, be done. I'm yours, and do with me as you will." A sense of peace washed over me that night. I relaxed. They put me in the bird, and we took off. I remember seeing Beatrice below us 10 minutes later. And after that, I fell asleep in the helicopter. We were making the turn to come back to the roof up there at Bryan East when I woke back up, and one of the crew members said, "Well, welcome back, Sleeping Beauty." And I said, "Was it too loud?" He said, "Well, we don't know who was making more noise, you or the helicopter. I was snoring so loud." Now, I think they probably used to people being unconscious or in a coma or something, but I don't think they see too many people actually fall asleep and that deeply. But I was at peace that night, and Jesus entered my heart on the way to there. And I knew that I was in the right place, and I knew that things were going to be okay. However they turned out, that was God's will for me that night. And That was a miracle in my life. That was a life-changing miracle in my life. I'm getting better. Still got a few more things to go through, and I'm going to get a new knee for Christmas this year, it looks like, too. But, it's all good today. As long as I get out of the way, allow God in my life, and take direction, and become teachable, and halfway humble, I've got a chance at this. I'm just amazed and grateful to be here. A friend of mine, I talked about Phil, I'd known for 30-some years. He passed away, and I was at his funeral a week ago Saturday. He had lots of little sayings, he said too. And I was always afraid I had to be whole. I had to be complete. I had to be, strong and, just protrude that air of confidence. But one of his sayings was, we're all cracked. That's how the light gets in. And I had to be broken to let the light of Jesus in my life. That's how it gets in. Not being whole, not being complete, not being the ruler of the universe. It came from being broken. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to be part of your family.